Hello and welcome to Flooring Models Kit Review Time. Today we've got Airfix's latest release. This is a 1/72nd MiG-17. What a great little aircraft. Obviously full of history, lots of information about this particular jet floating around. Again, flying against the Phantom. Knocking one out, it would seem. Okay, so there we go. So some beautiful markings available in this one, and obviously we're thinking Vietnam War, things like that right the way through. So anyway, a little about the kit on the box. We don't actually get much at all. Available from the PM store for a measly £12. Okay, and we've got a little bit of information a bit round there. So these are both from 69 and 1970. Obviously one in Russian markings, one in the People's Republic of Vietnam's one as well. Okay, so it is a sealed box. Never looked in one of these before, but I've got high hopes because Airfix recently have been really knocking them out of the park, to be honest. So down in here we've got that usual way about it. Okay, so we've got one bag, one bit of instructions. So just as always, we'll start in the instructions. So in here we've got the decals, which we'll look at in a moment, and then we'll start in the old instructions. So a little bit obviously about the MiG itself, and then going straight into it, we've got the cockpit area. So we're working our way through that, and then obviously we've got the back of the seat. We've got a figure, pilot figure, the usual sort of comic thing down in here for the actual one of the team. Okay, and then obviously putting the seat and the control stick and everything down in there, and obviously we've got this splitter for the intake. Okay, as it runs around both sides of the actual cockpit. Then down in here we've actually got the nozzle at the back, and then depending on if you're going to be having it open or closed with the speed brakes at the back, depending which nozzle you actually use, it's got some details molded onto it. You are going to need nose weight, and it's quite nice as well because you can drop it just down in the top here and pop that down into the gap between the splitter on that one. Okay, so making sure that's in, you've got the belly port in, opening up obviously whichever one you need to do if you are going to be having a stand, yeah, questionable, and then popping this nozzle back in, and obviously depending which one you've got will have the detail which actually comes through. Important to point out, and it's showing it down in here, we've got this little nodule with actually that splitter nudges up against. Okay, so that's right the way in with it. And then down in here, if you're not going to be going with the actual the display base at the bottom, it's talking about it being down in there as well. So obviously there's that one going in. All right. Next up, we're obviously under the underside. Gear up, gear down, depending if you can have the one-piece bay door underneath, open or closed. Then we got the other half of that intake ring onto the front of it, opening up some holes into the wings, usual thing if you're going to be using drop tanks. And then there's a couple of little nibs just down in here, depending if you are going to be sort of gear up or down, if you're going to be having them in or out. Okay, two wing halves going together, not forgetting the actual landing lights on the bottom. Okay, wings being fitted down onto this one, tailplanes going on, and then obviously you've got two-piece rudder system down at the back, working on the actual gear as well. Looks like they might actually be a little bit of weight on wheels. We'll have to have a look at that one. And then obviously putting the doors all going in, the gear being in, obviously the actuators, things like that, and the actual various ones. Nice to see we've got a line up here with some of the angles showing exactly how it should be, and the gear, that sort of leaning back gear on this one as well. So important to make a note of that one. And then literally up on the other side, we've got the usual thing, got the gun being fitted, and then obviously the smaller gun on one side, so it's the cannon on that side, the smaller guns on the other one. And then if you're going to having it with the actual speed brakes closed, just closing those up, or if you're going to be having them open, obviously having those open on there just like that. Canopy system being fitted down onto this one, we've got that aerial at the top, and then obviously pitot on the other side being fitted onto those. Fuel tanks, or sorry, I should say drop tanks, being fitted onto that one, getting them installed into it. And again, nice little touch. So if you haven't got enough nose weight in the actual model, they've supplied you with a barrel to shove underneath it at the back to hold it up. Thank you, Airfix. That's a nice touch. Because let's face it, we've all been there. Super gluing nose wheels down. Okay, so markings down in here, as we said, we've got the People's, the Vietnam People's Air Force down in here. I won't try and pronounce it, in 1969. That lovely mottled with the actual silver on the underside for the wings, but the fuselage. Really do like that scheme. Nice to see that one straight in the box. And then obviously we've got another one in there which is more just the general silver right the way over. And again, not a million decals down in here, enough though to make it very worthwhile doing it right the way through. One little thing I have noticed here though, this walkway area, you do have to paint it on. Okay, so just saying about that one. Speaking of decals, whilst we've got them here, we've got these beautifully done decals. And again, Airfix have really stepped up, to the point where, although this is generic lining in 72nd, it looks good enough to be writing. But again, they're nice. They're, I would call, a very nice type of finish. They're glossy, bordering on sort of satin, but at least they've moved away from those god-awful flat ones they used to do a few years ago. Right, in the bag we have one bag, which is sealed, which, you know, I must admit I have to sort of take a bit of a step back now, because I always moan at Airfix for having things in one bag, but now we're trying to save the planet. And we're just going to be having, you know, no bags and all the rest of it. Having one bag, I suppose, is slightly better. Although these are proper old school thick polythene bags, not like the light wispy rusty ones. Okay, for a change, we're going to start in the clear parts just to have a look. Again, it's that thing, it's a complicated shape, but you can probably see there's a little bit of a wobble here, there and everywhere with all of these said parts. I've got a little bit of flash around this bit round in here, but we're not worried about that at all, okay? But generally, I think because of the scale and the complexity of the shape, it's never going to be crystal clear. And as you can see, it's a little bit ripply and a little bit wobbly from most angles. The head-on one actually isn't too bad, as you can see there for the actual front windscreen. This little guy down in here, I think is pretty acceptable. The rest of it, I think you're going to get away with it. It's not as bad as it could be. At least it's clear, as in not frosted. Okay, so not going to take long. We've only got 3 sprues down in here. So this is sprue 2, which is the actual main fuselage sections. And again, I tell you what's nice, it looks like there's a slight shift with this kit, because the parts are actually quite very, very smooth, very, very glossy. They've moved away from that sort of matte finish that a lot of their kits have had. And the plastic as well doesn't seem that soft, really toffee type styrene. It seems to be more Hasegawa crispy, so hopefully that should, fingers crossed, get away with some of the small problems they've had, like short shots on sprues. And, you know, let's face it, I've had more than my fair share of dodgy kits over the years with various half tails and bits missing or warped and things like that. So hopefully with this may be a bit of a turn up. I hope, you know, fingers crossed that they're going to stick with this type of plastic. It's a little bit harder. It seems to be a little bit more crisper. So walking around on the close-up, as you can see, we haven't got any real riveting detail on this, apart from you've got access panels and latches onto it, but generally nothing anywhere else in this one. You could obviously add the detail, but straight out of the box, I think that's perfectly acceptable. So that's your fuselage detail. Got your rocket pods down in here. So again, they're a little bit soft because of its scaling out. It is pretty small. You can probably see on my finger the difference in the scale. We've got the drop tanks and some of the actual rocket pods on this one as well. Again, it's nothing really to charge home about, and on the inside you can see there's not a lot going in here, but it gives you a nice detailed shot there. Hopefully the camera's going to show that, but you've got a very nice showing the milling from the tooling of how that's done as well. Good general shape and fit should come through with it. I'm hoping it will do. So that looks quite nice. Okay, so on the wings side of things, we've got the wings, as you can see them down in here, looking very nice. Again, the boards on the top, because of this scale, these on here, they do look quite big. Really, photo etch will probably be the way to go, but really for something out of the kit like this one, I don't think it's a problem at all. As you can see, we've actually got the tail planes down on here, looking quite nice. Fixed trailing edges are those ones, as you might imagine, so there's no flap rail on detail on this one, but again, some nice little details down in here with the actual riveting on these for the access ports, things like that. And I have to say, for a 72nd scale kit, and even some of their 48 scale kits, you might notice their riveting and their actual panel line detail seems a lot finer than what we've been seeing of late, so that might be a nice little step in the right direction as well. Okay, so looking at the undersides, you can see them down in here. Again, you're looking at this very, very fine. If you know, my finger is a little bit of a clue down here, you can probably see how fine this detail is. It's not as big as you think. Okay, so again, looking at those right the way through, that's that oil drum. That's what we'll all be using. Pilot figure doesn't look too bad at all, although he doesn't look very Asian to me. He looks a bit generic, shall we say. Okay, that's the underside where that cannon is, and obviously with the 2 normal guns as well. So very nice indeed. And on the flip side, we do have a little bit of detail down in here which is very nice to see on the inside of these wheel wells. Again, great attention to detail on something that's so small. So no problem with that whatsoever. Okay. Okay, so over here we are on sprue C. That actually looks quite nice. A lot of the detail on this one, and I have to say, I'm pretty sure now the plastic's changed a little bit, we're not getting that sort of chewy, toffee type look to everything. The sprues are looking quite clean and sharp, and all the parts are looking very, very sharp as well. Unfortunately, we don't get weight on wheels, which I was sort of hoping with. But again, good close-up look at the parts, as you can see down in here. And did you notice we have not seen any sort of, you know, sink marks or any mass webbing or anything else like that? It's quite nice. Just the tyre detail on something of this scale looking absolutely gorgeous down in there, no problem at all. We have got a little bit of burring between the parts, but again, you're looking at this on the equivalent of under 25 times magnification, so that's what that's showing. So honestly, don't read into it too much. With the naked eye, I can't even see it. Okay, there's your nose wheel. That's the detail in all the different areas. We've got bits of the seat down the bottom here, and obviously the various parts. And then working our way up. So this is the fuselage halves, so this is the splitter, this is looking into it. So that's some nice details down in those as well. Working our way up. And again, some nice details with here. These are these areas for the speed brake being open at the back, around the nozzle area and things like that. I have to say, that's actually looking very, very sharp. To the point where, nice little touch with the detail again, just down in here in the inside of these speed brakes. There's a lot of detail in such a small kit. And again, who would have thought it, not being funny, no disrespect to Airfix, but if we go back sort of 20 years ago from what they are to now, this is really taking it up to the next level. It's the first time we've done a 72nd small scale Airfix kit recently, but with each one we have been seeing, there's definitely a step forward. And again, this is another massive leap. I'm hoping that Airfix will stick with what I call the clinky. It's not quite, you know, ching, glassy type of feel to the actual plastic, but you definitely don't get as soft a moulding, shall we say, and that usual sink marks. And again, this one, unfortunately, this isn't even my kit, it's for a friend of mine. But yeah, there's no sink marks, there's no marks, there's no short runs, there's no mismolds, there's nothing at all. It's just a generally very clean, crisp, sharp moulded. Okay, so it's literally on a par now of most of the other manufacturers, whereas before you always had that little, something niggling little thing would always be with it. But generally all of the parts, I have to say, are very, very nice. I do know a couple of people who have actually put this kit together already. If you don't know, at the time of doing this show, we've actually got a MIG-SIG going on with the Flooring Models Forum at the moment, and there's a few people actually building this one, and a couple of the guys who even finished it, and they've all reported to me it's a little gem of a kit. It goes together very, very nicely, no real fit problems or anything else like that, so hopefully that'll be true and it'll follow through for everyone building along as well with it. Anyway, there we go. That is the beautiful 1/72nd MiG-17 by Airfix.